Hi, this is Jack from ESFIworld.com, and with me I have UltraDavid Graham from the fighting game community, who is here at the NASL, so we thought we'd take the opportunity to sit down and talk with him. So first off, recently kind of in the StarCraft community, there's been a little bit of debate about players versus casters and kind of the interaction between the two, as well as the interchanging in roles. You've become a full-time commentator from a player. Do you feel that it's necessary to be one or the other?
The best case situation is to be both. And that's because being a player, you see the game evolve from an up-close perspective, and in some cases you can be the person evolving it. And that really helps you get a better grasp on commentating, because you know all of the situations, you know where the strategy is, where it's headed maybe, and that's all really important information for commentating. But I am now a full-time commentator, at least is my role in the fighting game community. I was a player for many years, but had to retire, and if I could, I would absolutely still be a player. I mean, that would be preferable to me. And I'm not saying that it would be preferable that I'm a player and not at all a commentator. I still want to be a commentator, but I wish that I could still play as well. It's so fun. But being a commentator is cool. It's just secondary, at least in the fighting game community. Here, it's done a little bit differently. So in fighting games, you don't need a commentator. You can pretty much see what all the action is. Commentators are like a bonus, which is why it's probably taken so long for us to develop commentators. Just never was really a necessary thing. But here, it really is. It's so important to have somebody explaining everything and being a good observer and knowing like what to look at and what to point out is huge in just having people watch it as a competitive thing. I mean, it's so much better to watch when there's a commentator. It's not even close. So the role of the commentator here is much bigger and much more important. So yeah, I mean, I heard about the controversy of late in StarCraft, but it's from a completely different point of view. One where the players don't necessarily take a back seat, but are much less visible and play a little bit less of an important role and are a little bit more separated from the audience and even the stream audience. I mean, literally separated from the audience there. That's we don't have anything like that in fighting games. They're right there. There's as little separation as possible, and I think that means that players are relatively more important, and commentators relatively less important in what we do.
So you've actually said that you watch StarCraft 2 to get tips on commentating. What kind of lessons have you learned from StarCraft?
The biggest thing, I think, is how to modulate the voice. Actually, doing different things with how my voice sounds, and that's something that I wasn't doing before, but it's something that StarCraft commentators do pretty well. Apart from that, how to fill up dead air. There's much more dead air in StarCraft than there is in fighting games. We have the opposite problem where we have too many things happening at once, and we have to cut off thoughts all the time. But they get to finish their thoughts regularly, and there's a period at the start of every match when they're just mining, when there's this downtime, and you have to figure out what to do with it. And so that's been helpful to see, how they approach that and what kind of stuff they say to fill up that air. I mean, we have that stuff too. In between, during a match, in between games, sometimes players want to take a little bit of time to think about it, and that can lead in some downtime. And so it's important that we not have dead air and do things with it. So I think those are probably the two that I've picked up. There are things that I much prefer about fighting game style commentary. It's much louder and crazier, and I appreciate those things a lot. And I'm not even particularly known or great at doing those things, but it's something that I really like, and yeah, I like that stuff. But as far as the stuff that I've gotten from StarCraft, yeah, that's not it.
Which commentators do you typically watch?
I try to watch a lot. I've been watching a lot of Day 9 lately because I really like the format of his show. I mean, not when he's commentating at a tournament, but it's just the show that he does. In order to get some tips on how to approach that, and then, but as far as like tournaments go, I really like Artosis. I think that he's the best. He's my favorite. I like what he does with his voice a lot, and he I mean, he's not like the hypest guy, but I feel like he does a pretty good job, relatively speaking, in the StarCraft community. So,
can you tell us more about your role within the fighting game community and maybe talk on the Wednesday night fights? So
I'm a commentator, and I go to lots of events. I've lately been going all over the place. You were at Canada Cup as well. I was there, and that was during a stretch where I was, in the space of 6 weeks in 4 different cities, all over the continent. And so I've really been traveling a lot and trying to do as many events as possible because I really enjoy it. But my secondary role is as an attorney. That's my real job. And the two are linked very closely because I do entertainment and video game law, and many of my clients are members of the fighting game community. And I'm starting to branch out to other, esports and such now. So that's the role. Like, that's a strong reason for why I go to so many events. That it's important for me to go meet people and glad hand and like pass my card around to get clients. And it's also important that I be on stream so that I can plug my business. And if like 1 out of every 20,000 people gets contacts me and I take them on as a client, then that's enough to keep me going. So those I guess are my 2 roles right now.
So there's actually a major this weekend. Why are you not at NEC or Northeast Championships?
Yeah, the main reason is that I've been traveling too much. Yeah, I'll be at SoCal Regionals in December. Oh, it is December. In like 2 weeks. Yeah, I guess the week after NEC, I'll be there, or maybe it's 2 weeks. I don't know, but it's coming up soon. In any case, yeah. So I'll be at that one, and I didn't want to go to NEC and SoCal Regionals in the same month, in the first half of the same month. I've been getting a little bit busier with the actual work with clients, and so I've had to kind of like prioritize a little bit, and that means that I can't go to as many events as I have been going to, as I want to go to. So yeah, I can't do every weekend anymore.
So why did you decide to come to the North American Star League Grand Finals?
Well, it's pretty close to me. I mean, I live about an hour east in West LA, and that was real close. And I've always wanted to come check out how things are at a StarCraft event, or at any event for any other game. I've only ever been to fighting game tournaments, and so I really want to see how other scenes do it and what the culture is like and how they set things up even. I mean, just literally the physical setup is so different than it is at fighting games. Not to mention the culture is very different. The whole thing is super different, and that's cool to see. Like it's like educational, I guess, and useful for us because we're trying to get bigger, and there are these scenes that have already gotten bigger, and not to say that I want to copy or even that I think we can copy some things. I don't think that we can, but there are things that we can pick up and lessons to be learned, and that's going to be important. So I wanted to come. I also just had to meet a couple people for business, so that's another reason.
We kind of talked about this earlier in the hallway, but I mentioned coming from StarCraft and going to something like Canada Cup. It was a huge culture shock for me, and I'm sure you're feeling it the other way. Can you talk about your initial thoughts about this tournament?
It's a huge culture shock. Yeah, absolutely. It's very quiet, and that's totally different. Okay, it's Saturday. It's not finals. It's not even semifinals. And I'm sure that that's a huge portion of it. But I was nevertheless pretty surprised at how quiet people are and how much they don't expect for somebody to come in and yell. Like I came in and, you know, I don't forget what it was, but something cool happened, and I went, ooh, like that, and people turned around and looked at me because it was just nothing. It wasn't what they do. So I mean, not to say that they're not getting excited, but they express it in very different ways. Like they'll clap, they'll go woo or something like that. But it's just like we, in the fighting game community, the way that we express excitement is to just go crazy, and that's totally not what happens here. So there's that. There's also the very interesting, like, differently arranged physical space. So there's like a players' lounge, like separate players' lounge, and the players like literally section themselves off from everybody else. And man, I can't even imagine that happening in fighting games. That sounds so foreign to me. The players in fighting games are just they just think of themselves as part of the scene, and you know, some of them are not the most the nicest guys, but by the, you know, for the most part they're very approachable, and they'll talk. And I think that the way that they think about themselves is different, and maybe that's a function of it being a smaller scene, but it's I feel like they're much more approachable. It's also different how, like, where the commentators are. They're like right in front with lights on them, in front of, you know, the game action, like by a ways. Like they're like 30 feet in front of the game. They're like right out there, like that's the focus. And that's totally different for us. And again, going back to how much more important commentators are, comparatively speaking, in StarCraft, that's understandable. It's just something that I'm not at all used to, and would be, I don't know about, like, maybe I wouldn't be like uncomfortable there, but it would feel strange to be the focus of the attention rather than something that's just there to give some additional, you know, enjoyment or whatever, or information. In fact, at most fighting game events, we don't even pipe the commentators over the loudspeakers. People watching can't hear it. It's only for the stream. Yeah, so I mean, it's weird to me that the commentators are talking. I mean, when I first came in, before I actually got into the place, just when I was in the atrium, all I could hear was some guy just talking. There was no, you know, crowd murmur. There was nothing. They wanted to listen to what was happening, and that's totally different. So yeah, it's interesting.
What do you like about this environment, and what do you think can be transferred to the fighting game community?
It's bigger. I prefer that. It's nice that it's such a big room, and I really like the arrangement that they have, where there's like the 4 monitors, like or screens set up so that you can see it. It's like right in the middle of the room. That's cool. I like that a lot. But not to sound too much like a dick, but I much prefer my scene. Other than that, so. For
people who are watching this who might not be so familiar with the fighting game community, can you try to paint us like a quick picture of what a typical tournament setup and what a typical tournament is like?
Man, we are grimy. We're grimy ass dudes. Even me, and I'm a lawyer. We all have like, we're just like loud and stupid, and we go crazy, even when it's not called for. We'll like specifically manufacture hype by making ridiculous bets. And so like if a match is boring, we'll bet on like what second it ends, like whether evens or odds. And, you know, we'll bet like whether somebody dies with all his meter or like not with his meter, or like, you know, that kind of stuff. Like we need that hype factor. And I think that's the biggest difference. Other than that, I mean, the players are seated right next to each other. They're always in very close physical proximity to each other. I noticed that at this setup here, the players are actually facing each other, which is unusual in StarCraft. And I was talking with a couple of guys about that, and they thought it was real cool or out of the ordinary that they were so close to each other. But for us, that's how it always is. Players always have to shake hands afterward. They always have to acknowledge each other, and and deal with each other and deal with the fans. I mean, the fans are there's no box separating the players from the fans. The players are at most they're on stage, and if they're on stage, they're only 10 feet away, and so they can hear everything that happens. You know, we're all trying to like get them off their game if they're people that we don't like, so we'll like catcall them and you know, try to like distract them. I don't know. I mean, it's a much like closer and louder environment, I guess. I think that's the biggest difference.
What do you think the fighting game community needs to be able to grow? Maybe not to something like the NASL, but something kind of as grand as the NASL.
I feel like we need more time. I think that's the biggest thing. We're coming from a pretty different scene background. We were relatively underground for almost the entirety of our existence until Street Fighter 4 came out in 2008. Before then, you know, a major tournament would be 100 people, maybe 150 people. The largest one would get 500 people, which I don't know. Maybe that sounds like a lot, but it's a very different format. It's not. It's an open tournament. Anybody can come, and so that was relatively small. Now at the biggest tournament of the year at Evolution, you know, we get 3,000 people coming. So it's bigger, but we still have this mentality that we're, you know, underground and like nobody cares about us and we're separate from everything else, and we're not really anymore. So we need some time to get over that mentality, and yeah, I don't want to get rid of that mentality entirely. I like it to some extent, but as far as the business of it goes, we have to, you know, figure out that there's more out there, like bigger things that we can be doing, and we're getting there. Like we're doing more stuff. Our tournaments are larger. They're making more money. We're getting more sponsors and more teams, and there are more players than ever before, and we're doing better on streams. I mean, when I started doing commentary on streams, we would be happy if we broke a couple hundred people watching the streams, and you know, Evolution had 2 million unique viewers this last year, so it's grown hugely in just a couple of years, and I expect that will continue, but we have to really keep working at it, like everybody. Definitely me as one of the commentators, I have to get better. There's a lot to improve on, and tournaments have to be run better, and we need to be publicized. We need to publicize ourselves better. We need to have more support from Capcom and from the other fighting game companies, who unfortunately don't do nearly as good a job with supporting the tournament scene as Blizzard does. And I don't know. Other than that, I mean, I kind of like our direction. I feel like we're going all right. But we definitely have, in terms of getting viewers, we have a pretty long road ahead of us to get to as big as NASL is.
So previously, you've kind of given the impression that you weren't really into the scene growing in this direction, like bigger, and that it might not be possible. Has this kind of helped change your mind, or what has kind of changed your mind? Because you seem really into the idea now of kind of becoming a bigger community and getting more kind of mainstream esports.
Well, I've always been interested in getting a bigger community. I've never been opposed to that, and I've since I've been in the scene, I've been trying to get more people to join, even if it's just friends I know. Before anybody knew who I was, I would always try to get people to come. So I'm not opposed to that at all, and I don't think that anybody is. I think that everybody in the fighting game community wants it to be bigger, and that a lot of people are doing a lot of hard work to get it there. What I don't want is for us to lose our character in doing so. I don't want to give up the things that I really like, and I really like how we are at tournaments. I really like our culture, and like the question always that people talk about is whether that's possible, to be much bigger and to be supported with more money and to have more money in the scene, and also to retain, our crazy character. And I think it is, and in fact, I think that who we are is very important in getting more people. I feel like we have a very attractive kind of culture going on, and I understand why it would be a culture shock, absolutely, if you were to go there and show up there for the first time and not know what to expect. It's very different. But I feel like that's good for getting more viewers at home, and for getting more players to come to tournaments, and for getting more people to support the scene in some way, and even for people to sponsor and to put in outside money. It's going to take a particular kind of sponsor, but there already are some that are like that, and I think that will grow. Yeah. No, I definitely want to get bigger. Okay.
So what kind of recommendations or tips or places can you recommend to people who want to get into the fighting game community?
The biggest one is to go to shoryuken.com. That is like the major hub. It's the place to go for forums and for links to streams and information about tournaments and all that stuff. That's the major site, at least for 2D games, like Street Fighter and that kind of stuff. It's like you can. There are other sites too for other games, but yeah, I think that's the biggest one. And make sure that you're following people on Twitter or on Twitch TV or wherever it is that they show, or whatever it is that they advertise. So yeah, I think definitely the key to things is SRK, which is what we call shoryuken.com, because that's the place where people will just post everything, and you can get whatever else you want in fighting games from there.
Okay. So. And not to make you pick between your children, but which game do you like best?
That's kind of hard, because it depends on what you mean.
Okay. Well, I guess which...
Like, to play versus to commentate are two very different things to me. To commentate, it's probably Marvel vs. Capcom 3. Nah, it's not. It's Super Street Fighter 2 Turbo, and that's my favorite to play as well. Okay. But as far as games that are played in like majors nowadays, definitely Marvel 3 is the most fun to commentate. It's a very zany game, and craziness happens, and it gives us a lot of opportunity to both talk about strategy and also to just go nuts. And I like that. As far as playing, I personally feel like Super Street Fighter 4, that whole series is stronger in strategy. And so I guess that's my favorite game to play as far as the new generation of games goes. I've been trying to get into King of Fighters 13. Seems like a really fun game, and I can see that it would be like a close second. But yeah, definitely 4 to play.
Okay, so that's all the questions I have for you. Do you have any comments or final shout-outs?
You can follow me on Twitter at UltraDavid, or you can check out my video game and entertainment law practice at dpg@law.com. And shout outs to anybody who, I don't want to come off as being too critical of this scene. I think that it's really cool, and I'm real happy to get more cooperation between the two, not necessarily the two scenes, but between fighting games and everybody else. Again, I want to make sure that we do that on our terms, on fighting games terms, but I also want to make sure that the other scenes do it on their terms as well, and that they can retain who they are, and yeah. So I guess I look forward to more cooperation, but between the scenes while retaining their essentials. So.
Thank you so much.
Cool. Thanks a lot.